From the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast, this is AgDay.
Talking turkey. See the moment a 10-year-old is crowned one of the world's best turkey callers. USDA releases its first crop progress report, but for some farmers, planting seems like an impossible dream right now.
They haven't seen any relief either, getting any snow melt going. So obviously the whole state is behind.
And more snow is on the way. Team coverage on what has been and will be several days of wild weather right now on AgDay. Good morning, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Happening right now, a powerful late season winter storm is set to move through the plains. That area has already seen a lot of snow. The National Weather Service in Grand Forks putting out this map. The areas shaded in red have the potential to see a foot or more of snow through Thursday. Meteorologists warning it could be the most impactful storm of the season, and difficult to impossible travel should be expected. It comes as several areas are still assessing the damage as brutal storms pushed across the country over the weekend. Amy Kiley has more on that damage.
Dangerous weather continues moving across the U.S., leaving behind a trail of destruction and death. This video shows hail falling near Dallas. Today, that storm system pushing through Louisiana.
This is just an unbelievably tragic moment for our state.
At least 5 people are dead after a twister hit Arkansas over the weekend.
We have activated the National Guard in the hardest hit areas of the state.
Just across the state line, Tennessee reports at least 15 deaths, with one in Alabama and another in Mississippi. The weather isn't sparing the north either.
3 individuals have lost their lives in the tornadoes that came through Crawford County.
Illinois communities are reeling from tornadoes. At least 5 people are dead due to severe weather in Indiana, with another fatality in Delaware. Now, a snowstorm is moving across northern states, and it could bring a spring blizzard to South Dakota.
If anybody has learned a lesson, it is that when those alerts come in, we need to take them seriously.
I'm Amy Kiley reporting.
And not just wild storms, but wild winds. Take a look at this. That's a trailer rolling across a northern Wyoming field. One livestock company says the trailer was ripped off a buyer's pickup on the way to delivery. The wind rolling that trailer 70 yards. They say it came to rest twice before the wind got it rolling once again. All this as USDA releases its first crop progress report of the season. Right now it reports 2% of the corn crop is planted. That's on par with the 5-year average. As for cotton, that's 4% planted, just 1% behind average. The big story, winter wheat condition, with 36% of the crop overall rated poor to very poor. Just 28% good to excellent. Kansas hit the hardest with 57% poor to very poor. And while some farmers in the South are pushing forward with Plant 23, for others, planting could still be several weeks away. AgDay's Michelle Rook joins us, and Michelle, many are already concerned about prevent plant.
Clinton, generally the market doesn't get too concerned about slow planting or prevent plant until the first week of May or later. However, the market may need to build weather premium in a little earlier, as the areas with snowpack account for about 2.5 billion bushels of corn production and 800 million bushels of soybean production. Plus, the biggest increases in planting intentions in the USDA report came in those same states. USDA already projecting spring wheat plantings at only 10.57 million acres, which is a 50-year low. And the top producer, North Dakota, was expected to see a 100,000 acre drop in seedings. But as you can see by these photos from Tanner Berg's farm about 30 miles southeast of Minot, the weather is putting that in even bigger jeopardy. He says they have about 4 feet of snow on every acre they farm, putting them at least a month and a half from the start of planting.
Yeah, I've talked to a lot of guys out in western North Dakota, out to the Montana border, and there's snow all the way out there. And usually they're the ones who start getting in first, you know, with some wheat acres and things like that. But They haven't seen any relief either, getting any snow melt going. So obviously the whole state is behind.
Corn acres are also at risk in that area, and USDA is projecting farmers will plant an additional 800,000 acres of corn in North Dakota, 350,000 in Minnesota, and 150,000 in South Dakota. However, the forecast calls for a warm up after all that snow, which could cause flooding and even prevented plant. Now in 2022, there were 5.6 million acres of prevent plant, many coming from that same geography.
I think 5 million acres is a reasonable number. And frankly, I think that it's very possible that when all is said and done, we're going to end up with a corn acreage number just south of 90 million acres as opposed to 92 million.
And while farmers may plant a few more soybeans under that scenario, there will be soybean acres that will not get planted either, which is a concern with the market relying on the increased seedings in the north. In the USDA Perspective Plantings report, the agency said farmers intended to plant an additional 850,000 acres of soybeans in North Dakota, 200,000 more in South Dakota, and 100,000 in Minnesota, another 140,000 acres in Wisconsin. That adds up to 1.3 million.
All right, thanks, Michelle. And besides the next storm hitting the Dakotas, the AgDay weather team is tracking the chance for fires in the southern and central plains. Meteorologist Andrew Whitmire joins us with the very latest.
Yeah, let's take a look at the fire risk for today. Fires were a concern at the end of last week across the western half there of Oklahoma, and we're once again going to be under this critical phase here in this red shaded area where we're going to have to watch out for very low humidity values up around 5 to 15%, winds that could be gusting around 40 miles an hour. And that means any places that are in these red shaded areas from Wichita down towards Oklahoma City, all the way down towards the southern tip there of Texas, down towards San Angelo, fires could spread very quickly and very rapidly here. Now let's go ahead and investigate our wind speeds. We're looking for those purples. That's where we're going to get some wind gusts above 40 miles an hour. And notice right where those reds were on that fire map, that is where we again have to watch out for some gusty wind speeds in excess of 40 miles an hour. Meanwhile, by Wednesday, this wind shifts its way northward towards the northern prairie, and they're going to be looking at a full-fledged blizzard up there with likely 1 to 2 feet of sloppy, wet snow. Meanwhile, there's a stormy side to the system as well down across the Mississippi River Valley states. We'll be keeping a close eye on for potential for severe weather. And before you can plant some corn, you got to find the cornfield. That's what Alan Carlson of Minnesota said he was trying to do. Certainly a lot of snow that has to melt before field work can really begin. I'll have more on your AgDay forecast in just a few.
California's snowpack has reached its highest level ever recorded. The statewide snowpack is 236% of the peak normal, with state officials reporting a snow water content of 235% of normal. That's after 17 atmospheric rivers and several other storms hit the state starting in December. Now, the Central Sierra Snow Lab reports a seasonal total of 722 inches of snow. That's the second highest on record. And get this, even more snow is expected before the season officially ends. And despite all that snow, there's still concern about drought. A group of bipartisan senators will tour parts of the Colorado River this week. The river supplies reservoirs like Lake Mead and Lake Powell, which are important sources of water for farmers and consumers. The problem is levels in the lakes have fallen so low, experts say the states that pull from them need to cut up to 25% of their water usage. The Department of the Interior is threatening to intervene if the states can't negotiate a deal among themselves, and that's what the tour is all about. Now, senators from Colorado, Nevada, and Wyoming will make the trip in hopes of figuring out ways to work together. Now, Bayer has filed a lawsuit against 4 farmers in Missouri, claiming they illegally sprayed older versions of dicamba on its genetically engineered soybeans. Bayer also claiming they sprayed after the state's cutoff date. The lawsuits were filed in January in the Eastern District Court of Missouri. Bayer alleging the farmers violated their user agreements with the company and harmed its reputation with EPA. They also claim the 4 farmers saved seeds from Bayer's dicamba-tolerant crops and replanted them. Bayer is also suing 2 additional farmers for the same thing, but not for spraying. Critics say the lawsuits are an attempt by the company to blame an older version of dicamba for off-target movement and crop damage. And Vice President Kamala Harris continuing her tour of Africa, visiting a farm outside of Zambia's capital. The farm is using new techniques and technology to boost its vegetable crop. She was shown an app created to use artificial intelligence to identify the wellness of crops, which she later highlighted as an example of the innovation the U.S. wants to create itself. She's also pushing for $7 billion in commitments from the private sector that would go to climate resilience, adaptation, and mitigation across Africa.
In each of these engagements, it has been clear there is a strong desire from leaders on this continent from young entrepreneurs on this continent to increase investments on this continent.
The trip was intended to advance U.S. efforts to make inroads in a part of the world where China's influence runs deep. Soybeans continue to trade in the green on Monday with soybean oil following crude oil higher. We'll have the very latest with Michelle coming up next. And later we're talking turkey with a 10-year-old who has all the right stuff.
Ag Day is brought to you by Meristem Crop Performance. Learn how to get more bushels for less at meristemag.com.
Oil prices surging to start the week after OPEC announced it would cut production by more than 1 million barrels per day. The cuts will begin in May and last until at least the end of the year. The White House said the move was ill-advised, but a spokesperson noted the price of gas is down more than $1.50 since last summer's peak. Now some analysts say we could see $100 per barrel prices again in the future. The decision by OPEC spilled over into soybeans. And Michelle Rook is back with more in this morning's Markets Now.
Monday's market closes. We were higher in soybeans, kind of mixed in both corn and wheat futures. Randy Martinson with Martinson Ag is in with analysis. And Randy, we continued our rally in soybeans after getting above the $15 mark in old crop last week. And so, are we still trying to digest the positiveness of the reports, or was it the influence from the outside markets or crude oil or soybean oil or what?
I think it was a combination of those. I mean, I still think we have some of the report hangover taking place. We did have some bullish numbers, both old crop and new crop for soybeans, and it shows that USDA is going to have to make some adjustments on the demand side for old crop. On the new crop side, acres we need to buy some acres for soybeans because our stocks are going to likely be too little at this point. But I do think the fact that crude oil gapped $4 higher in the overnight because of that surprise and cut from OPEC pushed the soybean oil, which also spilled over to help push the soybeans higher.
We got some follow-through buying initially Monday on the corn market, but then old crop ended lower. So was there just some unwinding of spreads, or did we see a little pickup in farmers selling?
I think we saw some pickup in farmer selling. I mean, and we're also worried once they start rolling out of the May and rolling into July, you're going to roll to a 20-cent lower price. So I think we did see some hedge selling pressure. I think the losses in wheat the second half of the session spilled over to pull corn down as well.
Plus, you probably ran up into a little chart resistance there too, didn't you, in May?
Oh, yeah, you did. I mean, you start looking at where those levels are at in some of those old crop. And I think that was part of the what we ran into with wheat, too, is just a little bit of chart, selling. Once we saw Minneapolis break above 9, I think that hurt that market.
Yeah, I was going to ask you why wheat actually faded some of the early gains.
I think the big part was some profit taking, and part of it is that we could be looking at some moisture down in the southern plains, but Kansas City held on. But I think we also saw some spread unwinding. Chicago has been carrying such a deep discount to the other two exchanges, and I think some of that was some unwinding today as well. Yeah, that spread has gotten historically wide, so they probably needed to rewind that a little bit. Good point. Thanks so much for joining us, Randy Martinson with Martinson Ag. Our full analysis at agweb.com, but we'll have more Ag Day coming up.
Ag Day is sponsored by Germinator Closing Wheels. Germinator steel closing wheels, perfected in conventional, excels in no-till. Order 12 to 16 rows today and qualify for free shipping or 20% off an end zone moisture management package.
And today's focus, outside of the fire concerns and the snow up across the northern prairie, we're going to be keeping an eye on severe weather. Notice how we get these red shaded areas here. This is the area that we're going to be watching here for the potential for some explosive development later on today, where we could be looking at some strong tornadoes, damaging winds, heavy rain, and even large hail. And then as we head on into Wednesday, this threat shifts eastward. And let's watch this threat shift its way eastward as we head on into Wednesday. We'll be watching the Great Lakes states all the way down across parts of the deep south for a few tornadoes, some damaging wind gusts in excess of 60 miles per hour, and some heavy downpours as well as some small hail as we head throughout this midweek period. And then eventually that front begins to lift its way east and out of here before we head on into the Easter holiday weekend. Let's walk you through the future radar projection. And as we go throughout this Tuesday, again, we're going to be watching heavy pockets of snow across the Dakotas and upper portions of the Midwest. Meanwhile, we're going to be watching this frontal boundary here, and this is going to allow for the potential for some explosive development where we can see the cap breaking on Tuesday. And then all eyes on the cold front on Wednesday for the potential for mainly some damaging wind gust, as well as maybe a brief quick tornado or two as this front begins to work its way eastward. And again, that should be working its way out of the lower 48 here as we round out this week right on into Thursday. Check out the snowfall though across the northern prairie. Notice how we get some of those purples and even some of those pinks, bright pinks showing up. That's an indication of 1 to 2 feet of snow. Combine that with some wind gusts that could get upwards of around 40 miles an hour. They're going to be measuring snow drifts across the parts of the Dakotas, as well as the upper portions there of Minnesota, likely into feet. Looking at precipitation for this week, where you see those yellows and bright oranges and reds, that's an indication of, again, heavy pockets of water. We're watching the deep south again, as well as the northern prairie and the Great Lakes states, as well as the Pacific Northwest for added moisture chances for the rest of this week. Check out temperatures this afternoon, screaming more like summer than spring for many locations here. Cold air, though, out to the west will begin to try to work its way south and east just a touch behind this front here as we head on into Thursday, right on into Friday. That's a look around the country. Now let's take a look at your Ag Day select cities. Going over to Albany, Illinois, chance of a few strong storms developing late today, high 70 degrees and humid. Fargo, North Dakota, likely looking at blizzard conditions, high 30 degrees, and going over to Oklahoma, watch out for high fire danger.
Ag Day Farm Country Forecast is brought to you by Calhoun Superstructure, engineered fabric buildings serving the agriculture and fertilizer industries for over 30 years. Visit calhounsuperstructure.com/AG. That's calhounsuperstructure.com/AG.
A plan by USDA to cut milk supplied through the WIC program is starting to generate national interest. The story getting picked up by USA Today. It reports USDA has proposed dropping by as much as 25% the amount of milk women and children in the program can receive each month. USDA says the cuts are science-based recommendations, saying currently milk is provided in amounts of up to 128% of what's recommended according to dietary guidelines. The new recommendations would put amounts between 71% to 96% of daily recommendations. Now, USA Today reports right now bipartisan congressional groups are lobbying USDA not to reduce the milk benefits. A final rule is expected in up to 6 months. An Italian cheese manufacturer is taking over a cheese plant in Wisconsin. DairyHerd.com reporting Grand Cheese Company has acquired the former Foremost Farms plant in Chilton. Grand manufactures several lines of cheese for pizzerias and restaurants. In May of 2020, Foremost announced plans to close the Chilton plant, stating that making long-term investments into that facility would no longer benefit the company strategically. Now, at the time, the plant had been in production since the 1940s and had 53 employees at that location. We're gobbling up the competition this month. Up next, no, we're not talking basketball. We're talking about turkey calling. You won't want to miss one of the winners next.
Ag Day is brought to you by Lamar's Toy Store, the largest and most diversified farm toy store in the U.S. They have new and old and do restorations and customizations too. You need to see it to believe it. Visit lamarstoystore.com or call us at 712-546-4305.
In the Country on Ag Day is brought to you by Pivot Bio. What if you had the nitrogen you need already on seed? Pivot Bio is the first company to apply nitrogen on seed. The nitrogen you need, now on seed, from Pivot Bio. Learn more at pivotbio.com.
One young man can now call himself one of the world's best turkey callers. Now that's 10-year-old Gavin Bryan of Ruffin, South Carolina. He won the Poult Division of Callers 10 and younger at the National Wild Turkey Federation's Youth Grand National Turkey Calling Championships. His dad tells the Post and Courier newspaper that the award has been a 5-year quest for his son. He says Gavin has been in calling competitions since the age of 3. What's Gavin's secret to success? Well, he says he listens to turkey sounds on YouTube, but more importantly, he pays attention when he's out in the woods so he can get the real deal straight from the source. And you can tell Gavin was moved by the honor. Now that's a big trophy. And congratulations. And that's all the time we have this morning. We're sure glad you tuned in. From all of us here at AgDay, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Have a great day.